بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. I ask Allah Ta'ala to grant every one of us the sincere intention and the proper comprehension. Allahumma ameen. So in our last class, we clarified the meanings of al-Islam and al-Iman that were mentioned in the Hadith. We went over the basis of the meaning of Iman. What was narrated in this Hadith regarding al-Islam is in correspondence with another Hadith that is narrated by Ibn Umar from the Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam, that he said, بُنِيَ الْإِسْلَامُ عَلَى خَمْسٍ, which means there are 5 pillars of al-Islam. And these 5 pillars are the most important matters in al-Islam. And with these 5 pillars, the religion is supported. The first is the Shahadatain, the 2 testifications of faith. Then you have the prayer, then zakah, then fasting, then performing al-Hajj. To bring it closer to the understanding, the religion is likened to a big tent. Imagine a tent. In the middle part of this tent, you have the main post that is holding up the tent. As long as this middle post is standing erect, then the tent is held up. And this is the 2 testifications of faith. Then you have the prayer, zakah, fasting, and al-Hajj. And they are like the 4 corners, or let's say the 4 corner posts that are supporting that tent. So as long as these posts are strong and they are being held up, then the stronger the tent will be. If this was accompanied now by more good deeds, then these would be like pegs, awtad, that would further strengthen that tent. The more pegs you have, the firmer and more solid that tent will be. And it would prevent the wind from moving it this way and pushing it that way. And so removing that tent would be much harder, right? Because it has such a strong foundation pulling it to the ground. And the same goes for the religion. So if the person has the correct belief in his heart and he utters the 2 testifications, which are أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا رسول الله, then he is a Muslim and she is a Muslimah. Such a person would be a believer. After this, if that person performs the prayer, or if they pay the zakah and fast Ramadan and perform al-Hajj, then this person's belief would get stronger, and that person would be a stronger believer. Now, if he followed that up by fulfilling the other obligations and refraining from the sins, then this Muslim would reach a very high status by having this strong, firm belief Subhanallah. May Allah make us amongst those Muslims. Allahumma ameen. And every time he does more good deeds, the more and more difficult it becomes for his own nafs, his own self, and for the devil to drive him to do what Allah does not accept. Yani, the more he does good deeds, the more it would become difficult for his nafs to steer him to disobeying Allah, and for the devil to drive him to do something that would lessen his status and make him fall short. When the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, for one to testify that no one is God except Allah and that Muhammad is the messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wassalam, this showed that a person who is not Muslim would not become Muslim unless he gathered between two matters. And they are to believe in the heart, in the meanings of the two shahadas, the two testifications, and to utter them both with the tongue. And it shows that it is not enough to merely believe in the heart without uttering with the tongue. And some of the scholars mentioned explicitly that this is a matter of consensus, without any disagreement. For this reason, the muhaqqiqun, the scholars who looked very well into this matter, they said it is not enough for one to merely believe in the heart in the two testifications in order to be considered a believer to Allah, as long as he did not utter them with the tongue. So the mujtahidun, the great top scholars, they said that in order for a kafir, a non-Muslim, to be considered a Muslim, a believer, he must do two things. He must believe in his heart, in the meanings of the two testifications, and he must utter them with his tongue. And this is what Al-Imam Al-Shafi'i said, and what Abu Hanifa said. May Allah raise their ranks and benefit us by them. And what other mujtahids said as well. This is the case because this is what the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam pointed to. An-Nawawi said about this case, fiha ijma', which means there is a consensus about it. He said, إذا صدق الكافر بقلبه ولم ينطق بلسانه فهو عند الله تعالى كافر وهو خالد في نار جهنم وهذا إجماع بين العلماء. He said, if the kafir, the non-Muslim, believed in his heart but did not utter the two testifications with his tongue, then he is judged as a kafir, as a non-Muslim, by Allah, and he will be in hellfire everlastingly. And this is a consensus amongst the scholars. That's the end of his quote here. Then after some time, another scholar came and said something which is a mistake. What did he say? Which is a mistake, it's not correct. He said that if one believed in the heart but did not utter with the tongue, then he is a kafir to us, he is a non-believer to us, because we don't know what is in his heart, but he would be a Muslim to Allah. But this is wrong. This is not correct. So one should not pay any attention to that saying, because it goes against the consensus of the scholars. Yani the scholars have an agreement that that is not correct. It goes against the unanimous agreement of the mujtahid scholars, the top scholars. and any opinion that contradicts the consensus of the scholars, then we do not pay any attention to it. Then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said in this hadith that amongst the matters that support the religion is for one to perform the prayer. And as mentioned in the other hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, خمس صلوات كتبهن الله على العباد من أتى بهن بتمامهن كان له عند الله عهد أن يدخله الجنة ومن لم يأت بهن بتمامهن فليس له عند الله عهد أن يدخله الجنة إن شاء عذبه وإن شاء أدخله الجنة. The Prophet ﷺ said, what means, there are 5 prayers which were made obligatory by Allah upon the slaves. Whoever performs them with their completeness, that means by fulfilling their integrals, their conditions, and while avoiding the invalidators. So the Prophet said, whoever performs them with their completeness, then Allah promised to admit that Muslim into paradise. And the one who does not perform them with their completeness, like by leaving some of them out, for example, or he would perform the appearance of the prayer while not fulfilling some of its integrals or conditions, or while leaving out, avoiding the invalidators, the Prophet said, then the person does not have this promise from Allah to be admitted into paradise. If Allah willed, then this person will be tortured. And if Allah willed, then He will admit him into paradise. So he doesn't have that same promise. It is understood from this that if one fulfills these 5 prayers in the proper way, according to the way that the Prophet ﷺ taught, and in the way that the religion asks us to do, then Allah would facilitate the good deeds for that person. And Allah will keep him far from the enormous sins and the other sins. And this is because Allah Ta'ala said in Sooratul-Ankabut, ayah 45, إِنَّ الصَّلَاةَ تَنْهَى عَنِ الْفَحْشَاءِ وَالْمُنكَرِ. This means that whoever fulfills the 5 prayers, as we mentioned, by fulfilling the integrals and the conditions and avoiding the invalidators, and the person also avoided the disliked matters in the prayer that would prevent one from getting the reward, the one who consistently performs the prayer in this way, then these prayers will aid him and will push him in such a way that he would fulfill the obligations and he would stay away from sinning. That means he would fulfill all of the obligations and he would stay away from all of the sins. Subhanallah, this is something immense. Yani the one who prays, if you want perfectly like that, this is a way to piety. The one who prays like that would insha'Allah ta'ala reach piety, because that is one of the secrets of the prayer. But ask yourself honestly, who prays every prayer like that? Who prays every prayer like that? If you think about it, who performs a complete wudu and prays the prayer in a complete way to get as much reward as he can from it? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he was informed of a man who would pray properly, the way that we are ordered to pray, and he would get up at night after sleeping and he would, subhanallah, make wudu and perform optional, rewardable prayers. So some of the companions came to the Prophet. They said, Ya Rasulullah, this man, he prays during the day, he gets up at night and prays optional prayers, but during the daytime, he steals. He steals. He commits sins, yani. He steals. What did the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam say? The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, "Satanhahu salatuh," which means his prayer will stop him from stealing. His prayer will stop him from stealing. So whoever is like that, meaning whoever prays exactly how we just mentioned, fulfilling the integrals and the conditions, staying away from the invalidators of the prayer, his prayer will, without a doubt, stop him from sinning. If he's praying a complete prayer. That is for the one who truly fulfills everything that we said, and he refrains from all that we mentioned. And amongst that, which every Muslim must pay attention to in order for their prayer to be valid, is uttering the Arabic letters correctly from their proper exits. While one is reciting from the Qur'aan in the prayer, like al-Fatiha, and when pronouncing the obligatory azkar. The case of many people is that they perform the appearance of the prayer without uttering the letters correctly. This happens to many people. They do not utter the letters correctly from their proper exits. If one uttered the letters incorrectly, so from other than their exits, then this letter is not considered correct, right? So it would not be valid. And by that, one's recitation is not valid. Subhanallah. So one must pay attention to the exits of these letters and their attributes. So one would learn that from a teacher and how they are pronounced in order for their recitation to be valid and by that their prayer to be valid. For example, many people do not utter the letter Dad correctly. They do not say Dad. They say something like a thick dal. Yani they utter it like a thick dal. But these are two different letters, Dad and dal. And some pronounce it as a Dha. Dha. And this is a different letter in the language. Then you have people who pronounce the Sad as a thick Seen. Seen. They pronounce the Sad. These are both whistling letters. Yes, the Sad and the Seen. However, they are two different letters. So some people, they pronounce the Sad as a thick Seen. Then you have some people who utter the Seen as a Tha. And all of this, whoever does that, his or her Fatiha, yani the recitation of al-Fatiha, it would not be valid. And so his or her prayer would not be valid. Subhanallah. And some of these letters, if one changes their exits, so they don't pronounce them correctly. They pronounce it as a different letter, yani they change their exits, then the meaning might be changed. Let's give an example of that. If one recited وَعَلَى عِبَادِ اللَّهِ الصَّالِحِينَ وَعَلَى عِبَادِ اللَّهِ الصَّالِحِينَ, if they recited this with a sin by saying salihin instead of salihin, so if they said salihin, or in a way that it is not a sad but it is a sin, instead of saying salihin, then the meaning actually changes. That's because in the Arabic language, salih means the one who defecated, and salih means the one who is accepted by Allah, yani the pious person. There's a big difference between these two meanings. Subhanallah. So it is important for the one who prays to pay due attention to how he performs his prayer and to put effort to fulfill it in the correct way. If he does that as he is ordered, he would gain and she would gain the most reward that one can gain during their day and their night. There is no reward that is greater than the reward that one can get from performing the 5 obligatory prayers properly during the day and the night. So if one learns that this is an opportunity to gain the most reward that you can gain in your day and your night, then subhanallah, one would really take care of this matter of the prayer. I ask Allah to grant me and you to take care of this matter and to gain as much benefit and reward as we can from it. Allahumma ameen. And the greatest reward amongst the prayers, amongst the 5 prayers, yani, is for the Asr prayer. The Asr prayer. That is why the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said in the Hadith, من ترك صلاة العصر فقد حبط عمله. Whoever leaves out the Asr prayer, meaning intentionally, then he is similar to a person who has lost all of his rewards from that day. And that is because the greatest reward that one can get during their day is in the Asr prayer. And by that, he would have lost out on that immense reward. So it is as if he lost all of the rewards for that day. Subhanallah. And in performing the prayers, there are many other benefits that the believer should not neglect. Whoever prays the Subh prayer in Jama'ah, the Subh means the Fajr prayer, in Jama'ah, in congregation, then they will be protected by Allah until the night. And whoever prays Al-Isha prayer, the nighttime prayer, in congregation, then he is protected by Allah until As-Subh, until Fajr. How would one miss that great benefit after having learned about it? And there are many other benefits that Allah the Exalted put in the prayer. So one ought to take care of praying these prayers regularly and not miss out on the many benefits that Allah made in these prayers, and to pray them in the way that Allah ordained. Some people, they pray in such a way that they merely fulfill the obligations, just so they are not falling into a sin. And it's good that they're not falling into a sin, assuming that they did everything correctly, validly. However, they wouldn't get reward. They would not get reward. So yeah, their situation is definitely much, much better than the one who didn't pray at all. Of course, this person is fulfilling their obligation. But there are people that pray, and may Allah make us like these pious people. They pray complete prayers. Yani they pray in such a way that they want to get the utmost reward that they can from the prayer. And so they have khushu' throughout the prayer. Yani they have the fear of Allah in their heart, knowing that Allah sees them and Allah knows about them. They have this in their heart throughout the prayer. They are not distracted by their setting or their surroundings. They're not distracted by their heart or what's on their mind. They're not distracted by the dunya. They're not distracted by what they're gonna cook for dinner later, or what they're going to buy at the store, or checking their email, or did that person reply to my message? They're not distracted by these things. They are praying and they are remembering the hereafter, paradise and hellfire. Subhanallah, may Allah grant us to pray prayers like that. The one who prays like that, they definitely benefit, and their heart benefits. And they come out of that prayer having attained a great amount of reward that they will find on the Day of Judgment. But the one who prays merely to fulfill the obligation, they won't get the reward. And keep in mind that we are explaining this according to the Shafi'i school. We are explaining this according to the Shafi'i school. Yani any details like this that we mention, it's under that school. So that is because this person prays while falling into many disliked makruh matters which deprive him of the reward. For example, he recites al-Fatiha and then he does not recite anything after it. If he bows, he does not say the tasbih. He does not say Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. When he comes back up, so he comes in the i'tidal position, he doesn't say the dua that one should say. If he does sujood, for example, he doesn't say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. So he comes out of the prayer not having gained all of this reward that he could have gained. One of our teachers, may Allah protect him and raise his rank and lengthen his life and benefit us greatly by him. He said, why would one do that? He said, if he performs the prayer in the proper way, in a way where he ponders into the meaning of what he is reciting, what would he miss out on? It requires 2 extra minutes, for example. So he would deprive himself of that great goodness that Allah the Exalted promised, just so that he doesn't put in an extra 2 minutes. He said, we should not be like that. And this is not intelligence. Rather, it is the opposite of being intelligent. That one misses out on this great reward in the hereafter in exchange for something that has no value. And at times, the reason for this is that the parent or whoever is teaching the child is not teaching them how to pray properly. So they don't teach them the sunnahs, for example. and what is needed for the great reward. And there is no harm if the teacher or the parent started by teaching them the obligations of the prayer first. Of course not. But they also need to teach them the recommended matters in the prayer so that the child would grow up accustomed to performing them. Otherwise, the child wouldn't grow up accustomed to that. And what helps the child to perform the prayer in a good, complete way is for the child to see the parents themselves taking care of that matter of the prayer. For him to see them performing the prayer in a complete way. So the parents should not delay praying the Asr prayer until the end of the time. Yani when the sun turns yellow. And it's easy to look at it. It doesn't hurt the eyes the same. They shouldn't wait to pray Al-Asr during that time. And then they would pray it fast without thinking about any of the meanings of what he or she is reciting. If this is the case, then the child would usually grow up doing the same. If the child does not see his parent praying in al-jama'ah, in congregation, without an excuse, then the child will usually grow up to be like that as well. They would be far away from praying in congregation. And so they would lose out on the great reward for praying in congregation, and the child would lose out, they would lose the protection that is promised for those who pray in congregation, and missing out on other benefits. So one needs to take care of his prayer and organize a plan, organize his schedule around his prayer instead of the other way around. So the person would make the time of the prayer a priority, and he does not put other things ahead of the prayer. Rather, he delays other things if they need to be delayed so that he can pray. And it was mentioned that one of the presidents who lived during our time, he was keen to perform the prayer in its due time. And it was known about him that if he was in a meeting, if he was sitting with anyone, it didn't matter who he was with or what meeting he had, if he needed to pray, he would interrupt that meeting in order to go and pray. And he would go perform the prayer and he would come back to his meeting. And he did this even during the United Nations meeting. So he would not put anything ahead of his prayer. So one of our teachers said, if a person in that position, a president, used to do that, then it should be a lot easier for someone like me and you to do it. And I ask Allah the Exalted to make us amongst those who perform the prayers consistently and in the best way. Allahumma ameen. And I will mention a benefit to leave you with. The scholars said that the one who is busy with the obligations, this person is excused. But the one who neglects the obligations and busies himself or herself with optional deeds, then this person is fooled and deluded. So the one who is busy with the obligations, it means he's busy with protecting himself from falling into sins. He's fixing himself. He's busy working on himself so that he straightens himself up and doesn't commit sins. He's avoiding the sins. For example, he's making up obligatory prayers that he had or she had. If one has obligatory prayers to make up, especially if they miss them, didn't pray them without an excuse, they need to rush to make them up. And likewise with the obligatory fasts. So if someone had that, they should rush and make these up. And if one is not sure how many they have, they would keep making up prayers and keep making up fasts until they feel content that they have made them all up. So this person is excused because they are busy working on themselves, fulfilling their obligations. But the one who neglects that and instead he busies himself or herself with the optional deeds, the scholars said this person is fooled. He's fooling himself, and she is fooling herself. Now, that doesn't mean that they are not doing something that is good. If they're sitting there doing dhikr, for example, this is good. However, one is actually fooling themselves if they're leaving out what they will be asked about on the Day of Judgment, like the prayer. Because we will not be asked about the optional dhikr. You will not be asked about that. You will be asked about your prayer, without a doubt. You will be asked about your obligatory fasting, without a doubt. You will be asked about your zakah, for example. If a person missed fulfilling their zakah in past years, for example, of their life, one needs to fix that. One needs to make that up. So a person should be searching their situation, looking at from the time they became pubescent until now, what have they missed out on from the obligations? What sins have they committed from the time you became pubescent until today? What sins, if any, have you committed? Have you fell into? Whether you were knowledgeable or you weren't, a sin is still a sin. This is how the intelligent person looks at it. Did I fall into a sin? Did I take something that was not halal for me to take? Did I do something that was not permissible for me to do? And then one finds out what they need to do to clear themselves of that sin so that they are not asked about it on the Day of Judgment. Right now, we are alive. Alhamdulillah. Right now, we can make up for all of that. Bi-iznillahi ta'ala. And if one doesn't know how, let them ask. If such and such happened with someone, and now they want to fix that situation, what is upon them? Is there anything that they need to do now so that they are not asked about this later, so that they are not held to account for this on the Day of Judgment? Let them ask the teachers, ask the sheikhs, how can I fix this situation before I die? Subhanallah, if someone stole something when they were younger but they were pubescent, I'm specifically talking here about the pubescent time, they would need to make up for that. Even if they're not able to give that thing back for whatever reason. Does that mean like that's it? I don't know that person anymore that I took it from, or no, there are still things that a person would need to do so that they are not asked about this on the Day of Judgment. So let a person be wise. Look through your deeds from the time that you became pubescent until today. What do you need to rush and fix? Whether it was missing out some obligations or falling into some forbidden matters that one needs to learn what they need to do about that. And Allah, the Exalted, knows best. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.